I sensed something wasn't right when I first lifted up the velvet box containing the wedding ring since it was so light. Maybe I had a sneaking suspicion of what was going to happen. Linda Ford is my name. I am employed at an investment bank as an analyst, and I am 28 years old. Anthony Rolds, my longtime boyfriend, proposed to me 5 months ago. I had made it a regular habit to look at my wedding ring every morning as our wedding day drew near. This unique ring was chosen as a gift for Anthony's fiancée by his parents, who are well-known financial sector tycoons. My heart almost stopped as I opened the box. It was deserted. It was the absence of the ring that ought to have gleamed in the early light. Mom. I ran down the steps and yelled, "Did you notice my ring? Have you moved it?" My mom slowly glanced up from her coffee in the kitchen. She had her favorite cup wrapped around her immaculately manicured fingers. She had instilled these ideals in us, her daughters, and had always been a perfectionist. Her brow lowered. "What do you mean? It's in your room, right? Perhaps you just forgot where you put it since you've been so busy getting ready for the wedding." "The box is empty," I answered, presenting the velvet case with shaking hands. "It's always been right here." My mother said, "You're getting messier, aren't you?" Without even glancing at the box, with everything related to the wedding on your thoughts. My sister Catherine's laughter came from the backyard at that very moment. She left college at the age of 23, and she has been relaxing at home instead of working ever since. I peered out the window. Catherine was there, playing with her phone and enjoying the sun. Catherine. With the screen door slamming loudly behind me, I rushed out into the garden. "Do you know anything about my ring?" She pivoted. Catherine's face broke into the arrogant smirk she had had since we were kids. "Oh, hey, Linda," she said. "What's happening? Why the rush? Do you know where my wedding ring is?" "Where? I don't know." "It's gone. There's no sign of it." "Really? Have you done a thorough check?" "Oh, now I recall. I'd pawned your ring to get one for Michael and myself since I had some bills to pay off. For that, I received a respectable price. You can get a better one for Anthony." I was taken aback by her sudden admission. This had always been our sisterly bond. The youngest, Catherine, received whatever she desired from others because she was pampered by our parents. On the other hand, because I was the oldest, I had to work hard for everything and was always held to high standards. Since we were little, everything had been this way. I was the only one reprimanded when Catherine and I committed the identical errors. "Because you're the older sister." Those were words that I hated. I was 5 years old when Catherine was born. I was constantly put in a supporting position while our parents treated her like something exceptional. My parents' focus was always on Catherine, regardless of how well I did in school or how many honors I received for extracurricular activities. I always had the best marks in high school. My goal of working in the banking industry was within reach, and I had a scholarship set up. Catherine, however, did not participate in extracurricular activities and had low marks. Our parents, however, persisted in saying, "She has her own strengths." I started living on my own after receiving a scholarship to college. I obtained internship experience while working weekends part-time. Anthony and I met there. He greatly appreciated my analytical abilities while he was a young executive in training at his father's business. Catherine, meanwhile, left the nearby institution soon after she enrolled. She said, "University just isn't for me," and began working part-time at a clothes store. His family accepted me with open arms as my connection with Anthony grew. In particular, Anthony's mother believed that I would be a fantastic support system for her son. Such feelings were also present in the ring Anthony's parents selected for me. "Don't say such ridiculous things." I took a step forward and gave Catherine a fierce look. "What happened to my wedding ring?" "Anthony's parents picked out this priceless ring on their own. Return it to me immediately." "I've already sold it, so I don't have it anymore," she said. "I'm planning to get married to my handsome boyfriend eventually, so I used it to pay off debts and to fund our own wedding ring." In order to become her boyfriend's ideal woman, Catherine was currently completely enamored with him and was spending a lot of money on luxury brands and beauty procedures. It was honestly hard to tell if it was true love or if she was being used. Linda, what are you yelling about? My father's voice was heard. He stood at the rear entrance. My mother was behind him, looking concerned. Catherine stole my wedding ring and sold it without permission, I said. No, Dad, that's not it. Catherine's bottom lip shook. Since childhood, she had maintained her talent for acting. With a step forward, my mother touched my arm. Catherine is your sister. Why would you say things like that? She had a motive. She was being chased by debt collectors. So how does that give her the right to steal and sell my wedding ring? Are you serious? It's my ring. You think I can just stay quiet after being told she stole and sold it? I shook off my mother's hand, my voice trembling with anger. Just buy a new ring, my father said with exasperation. That's absurd. That ring is very special, and it's irreplaceable. I stare at my parents. Besides, this is a crime. My voice echoed through the garden. Oh, honey, my mother's voice carried that condescending tone I despised. I understand you're upset, but don't blame Catherine so harshly. Everyone makes mistakes, don't they? Why can't you forgive her just this once? I looked at the three of them. My mother's disdainful expression, my father's awkward avoidance of eye contact, and Catherine's smug smirk. For 25 years, they had always favored Catherine and protected her. I hadn't expected it to this level. At that moment, something inside me solidified. A lifetime of patience crystallized into a determination that rested in my heart. I understand, I answered gently. If that's how you feel, I have my own plans. You best get ready. I heard my parents yelling my name from behind, but I didn't glance back as I entered the home. They had no clue what was going to unfold. I hurriedly grabbed the basics and rushed to my closest friend, Maggie's flat. Maggie's house was where I stayed the night. She and I met at a university accountancy club. She is an articulate and witty woman who works as a Wall Street trader. Despite having very different personalities, we are a fantastic match. How did this happen? Maggie gave me a glass of wine while we were gazing out of her balcony at the cityscape of Manhattan. I don't know, I said, taking the quivering wine glass. Why must things be this way, despite the fact that we are family? Linda Maggie gave me a serious look as she met my eyes. Even if you have always given up something for your family, this circumstance cannot be disregarded. This is a severe crime, not just a brawl between siblings. Maggie gently started to assess the issue. Let's first clarify the facts. It's obvious that this is stealing. Anthony's parents bought the ring. Thus, the prestige of the Reynolds family is also at stake. Yes, but what should I do? It's necessary to set things right because we're family. Maggie took a strong hold of my hand. Catherine will act in the same way again if you ignore this occurrence. Nobody gains from that. We conversed into the wee hours of the morning. Maggie calmly listened to my emotional outbursts while also thoroughly explaining the legal elements. Do you remember in university you covered for my investment mistake? Maggie thought back. You gave me a severe reprimand back then, but you later assisted me in coming up with a solution. The same is true of Catherine's current circumstance. Tough love is sometimes required. My misgivings were progressively allayed by Maggie's statements. She provided invaluable assistance throughout this trying period. Maggie remarked, "Hey," when she replenished our wine. Don't you believe that your parents' actual character has been shown by this circumstance? They put too much pressure on you and spoil Catherine. Is that really love? A question that had been bothering me for a while was answered by those words. Maggie has consistently given me insights I hadn't considered. However, Anthony's parents are different. Maggie added, they value you and acknowledge it. To avoid betraying that confidence, you must handle this matter appropriately. Maggie was always right on the money. It was her presence that enabled me to make the appropriate choices. I had a specific goal in mind when I drove back to my parents' house the following morning. As like nothing had occurred, Everyone was gathering in the kitchen. My mother remarked, "Oh, good," and placed a dish of pancakes on the counter. "Linda, we were worried about you." They obviously thought I would have cooled down and handled things as usual because I stayed upright. Catherine occupied the table. My father said, "Dear Linda, we've been discussing and thinking," while I was scowling. "No," I cut him off. "There is nothing for you to consider. I own the ring, but Catherine sold it after stealing it. She must give it back to me right now." "Actually," my mother said, standing up straight, "we will purchase a nicer ring for you. Everyone will be content that way, right?" I gaped at her in shock. "Can everyone be content? You're cool with my sister taking my priceless diamond from me? You're the older sister, correct? It's not like that. Can't you overlook a minor error?" My heart was thumping hard. I pulled out my phone gently. There was a call going on, and it was on speaker mode. "Mr. Ford, what exactly is going on?" The phone rang, and a masculine voice spoke. "Ah, is that James Rolls?" It was as though the blood had been sucked from my parents' faces. James Rolls, Anthony's father, was the caller. He has been in business for more than 30 years. He is extremely wealthy and controls several businesses. I had called him before I left for home and slipped the still functional smartphone into my pocket. I carried on talking on speaker mode, keeping Catherine's eyes open. "I apologize for bothering you, Mr. Rans. Would you kindly clarify the circumstances?" "Yes, as you just heard. My sister stole the wedding ring you bought for me and sold it to pay off her debts." I kept the phone on speaker mode, still looking directly at Catherine. "Please continue." "When my parents learned the truth, they reproached me, arguing that everyone makes mistakes. They said, looking hot and anxious, 'Why can't you forgive just one mistake?'" "I understand." I didn't realize how serious this situation was. Mr. Reynolds remarked, "We're truly sorry to Linda, but Catherine was in a horrible circumstance. My mother might explain. She had to make a difficult choice. We'll purchase a new ring for Linda ourselves." Catherine went on to say, "I'm very sorry, Mr. Rolls, but Linda has the ideal life and work. She can acquire another ring." "That's unacceptable." "That's enough." Although James spoke calmly, there was a trace of rage in his voice. The next day, our family faced Anthony's parents as we sat in the Reynolds study. Anthony, having heard the situation from me, was also present. The Reynolds study was packed with substantial furniture and vintage artwork. Rich businessman James Rolls, who had been on Wall Street for more than 30 years, was clearly upset. "The ring we bought for Linda isn't just any piece of jewelry," he said in a quiet but firm voice. "That ring was specifically chosen as a symbol of welcoming Linda into our family." Anthony's mother, Elizabeth, said with tears in her eyes, "It stands for our emotions." It appeared from my parents and Catherine's faces that they had finally come to terms with the seriousness of what they had done. Catherine's face was pale, and she couldn't raise her head. "I'm sorry," my father remarked. "My daughter did something awful." With all the effort he could manage, he spoke those words. Tears filled my mother's eyes as she repeatedly apologized, desperate and shaken. The mood of the study was gloomy and depressing. Amidst this tension, Anthony stood up boldly. Standing by his father, James, he said, "I will find it and get it back." As a businessman, Anthony had guided an investment firm to success at a young age. His determination to protect his family's honor was evident in his eyes. "Check every pawn shop," Anthony's father demanded. "Don't worry about the prices. It's for the family's honor." The following 3 days began with us embarking on a trek from Manhattan to Brooklyn, visiting each pawn shop one by one. From high-end establishments to modest ones, I proceeded to exhibit images. "Have you ever seen this kind of ring? Has a young lady brought in a ring that looks like this?" On the 3rd day, an elderly Brooklyn business owner showed us the security tape from his establishment. The video showed Catherine well. "This woman brought it in a few days ago," it said. "She had earned a considerable sum of money from the sale of the ring." The shopkeeper took the ring from the back and stated, "It should still be in the store because it hasn't been cashed out yet." I could tell something was wrong from the woman's nervous manner. I'm glad I held off on cashing it. Anthony checked the ring right away. "It's undeniable. This is it." Thank heavens. I feel so much relief. I was so relieved that I started crying. We were able to get the ring back. I remarked appreciatively, "I don't even know how to thank you enough." I went to the Rolds home with the ring and showed it to Anthony's parents. His father let out a long sigh of relief, and his mother gave me a wordless hug. His father resolutely declared, "We will handle this matter, including taking legal steps. You belong to our family, Linda. When it comes to preserving our honor, compromise is not an option." I gave a nod of assent. I became even more acutely aware of the profound affection underneath their sternness as a result of this encounter. The ring represented trust and familial ties to them in addition to being an accessory. As we were writing the report on Catherine's theft, we started the procedure of submitting a criminal complaint at the police station. The investigator looked over the security camera footage. "There is clear evidence here," the investigator said. "The pawn shop transaction footage is undeniable. And we've identified the ring." In a hurry, my parents went to the police station. My father seemed as pale as death, and my mother started weeping uncontrollably. "Please drop the charges," my mom begged. I whispered softly, "It's too late," to them. "This is a crime." Catherine was freed 2 days later. The issue was discussed by both families during a scheduled meeting with attorneys. Catherine's and my parents' features were more serious than I had ever seen them before. "We were wrong," my dad said in a low voice. I looked from my father to Catherine and said, "Let's talk and see if we can find a solution." Our proposed settlement was straightforward. Catherine would stop communicating with me and my family and return the whole amount used to purchase the ring back. In the end, both Catherine and my parents agreed to these stipulations. There was a long pause before my father spoke. "We agree." He said, "This was a failure in our upbringing." My mom nodded, her eyes full of sorrow. "We have harmed you for years, Linda. I sincerely apologize," she stated. She signed the settlement document with a slightly shaking hand. For our family, this signaled the start of a new era. "Tell me one thing, Catherine. What led to this situation?" "Because you were perfect," was Catherine's sour response. "You were exceptional and could accomplish anything. I, on the other hand, was always inferior. I leaned on my parents too much, even though I wanted to rely on them to validate my value. I was in dire need of money. Every day, the debt collectors pursued me. I had a range of complicated feelings when I heard this. Yes, I had always made an effort to be the nice kid. I tried to live up to my parents' expectations and succeed in society, but was it really what I wanted out of life? I felt a deep void after the settlement was finalized, and I made the decision to stop communicating with Catherine. Is it really possible to break familial ties so easily? My parents then made the decision to urge Catherine to live independently and to become self-sufficient. In anticipation of this new phase, she is presently searching for an apartment. A few months later, a week before Anthony and I were to get married, my mother paid me an unexpected visit at my apartment. "Linda, can we talk for a moment?" she asked, adopting a more reserved manner in favor of her customary forceful tone. "Catherine has been on my mind a lot lately. We've indulged her too much, always accepting her excuses and never holding her accountable," she said quietly at the beginning. "We've also been too unjust and severe with you, Mom. With the ring incident, we made a big error. The worst thing we could have done as parents was to try to hide our daughter's crime. You did the right thing," she said, her eyes glistening with tears. Catherine eventually benefited from having to face reality as a result of filing a lawsuit. My father gave me a call that evening. "Linda, may I attend the wedding?" He sounded unusually tentative. The ring incident had caused awkwardness in our relationship. "Yes, Father," I answered. "Anthony would be delighted if you could also come." "Thank you," he said after pausing. I've been enrolled in dance classes. I don't want to ruin the father-daughter dance. His words made me smile, involuntarily imagining my always dignified father learning to dance for me. It warmed my heart. My decision to forgive my parents was influenced by their sincere efforts. Catherine had received $20,000 from the pawn shop to make amends. My parents decided to use part of their retirement funds to repay this amount. This is also our way of making amends for everything else we've done wrongly to you, my father had said. The repayment from Catherine was proceeding smoothly. My father checked the payments at the bank every month. His sense of responsibility to the family was evident. Anthony's parents, without ever mentioning the incident with the ring, wholeheartedly celebrated our new beginning. His mother, especially, meticulously helped with everything from choosing the dress to decorating the venue. You are our pride, she told me on the final fitting day. I know you will make Anthony happy, but more importantly, I want you to cherish your own happiness, she said, a sentiment no one had ever expressed to me before. My own happiness. What was that exactly? On the morning of the wedding, I greeted the day with a surprisingly calm spirit. While the makeup artist applied the final touches, I studied my reflection in the mirror. Linda. A knock on the door interrupted my thoughts. It was my mother. Come in, I invited her. She teared up seeing me in my white dress. You look perfect, she murmured. Mom, look at this, I said, picking up an envelope from the dresser. It's a letter from Catherine. Since the incident, I hadn't seen Catherine, adhering to the terms of our settlement, which also included no contact. Occasionally, I felt a pang of loneliness, contradiction I was fully aware of, despite the years of distress caused by her actions and the unjust treatment by our parents. Recalling Catherine's words of anguish that day stirred complex emotions within me. Have you opened it? My mother asked softly. Not yet, I responded, touching the envelope tenderly. But I don't think I need to open it now. Instead, I stepped up and grasped her hand. Today is a day for new beginnings. Let's leave the past behind and focus forward. She nodded softly and embraced me. In the chapel, Anthony met me with a lovely grin. My father, worried yet controlled, took my arm, and we began heading down the aisle. Don't be nervous, Dad, I urged quietly. Show me the results of those lessons, I taunted. My father flashed a little grin as we exchanged vows and rings. A moment of trepidation occurred when Anthony placed the ring onto my finger, but as his warm palm surrounded mine and the ring settled softly, it seemed as if everything returned to its natural place. During the father-daughter dance at the reception, my father led me with slightly uneven yet sincere movements. Linda, he muttered as the song was ending. Thank you. For what? For teaching me to lie strongly and honestly. When the party was over and I was by myself in my hotel room that evening, I at last opened Catherine's letter. I won't ask for your pardon, my big sister. I don't deserve it, but I had to let you know that your choice was the right one. I was furious and resentful when you indicated you would file charges, but now I get why. I needed that wake-up call. I'm going to counseling right now. I have also begun to pay back my loans. I'm attempting, for the first time, to handle my issues without consulting our parents. I may be genuinely accepting responsibility for my behavior for the first time. I hope you're happy. From the bottom of my heart, I wish you that. Catherine. Our family was set to start a new chapter. It appears that Catherine and that man are no longer together. It's for the best, I believe. Sometimes the most beautiful lessons come from the greatest scars, and other times you have to let go of everything that was in order to regain what was lost. The ring taught me the true meaning of brightness.
Sarah scowled at me while crossing her arms. Do you know what Tommy asked me yesterday? He wanted to know if he could have a tattoo when he reached 16.
16.
And then Jake jumped in, saying he'd been looking up tattoo artists online. Sarah, they're only kids. They can't get tattoos without parental authorization anyhow, I attempted to argue with her. And when they're adults, they'll make their own choices about their bodies, just like I did. Their own choices. Sarah's tone increased by one note. Before you walked up with that thing on your arm, they had never discussed tattoos.
It's all your fault.
I inhaled deeply. Come on, Sarah, tattoos are so popular right now. At the grocery store, half of the patrons had them. At school, the boys most likely witness scores of people with tattoos every day. I can't really be held responsible for their curiosity. Don't you dare try to rationalize this, said Sarah, who was now trembling. You don't realize what you've begun. What will happen once they desire tattoos? Because it seems cool, they'll start smoking, then drinking, and before you know it, they'll be doing drugs. As I stood in Sarah's living room, I had the impression that I had entered a parallel universe where having a tattoo was the same as corrupting children. As I tried to maintain my composure, I remarked, Sarah, this is ridiculous. Throughout my life, I have never smoked a cigarette. I spend 4 days a week at the gym. Kombucha is the most unusual beverage I consume. You are aware of everything.
It doesn't matter.
Now Sarah's face was flushed. The fact is, you've changed, and I've been thinking about this a lot. As she often did before saying anything she believes would make her seem authoritative, she straightened her back. I no longer want you to visit my home. My boys are negatively impacted by you. In fact, I laughed. That or we'd have to cry. A negative influence due to a tattoo? Do you even hear yourself at this moment, Sarah? Don't make fun of me, she yelled. I mean it. I do not want you to return, so I want you to go. This is insane, I said, reaching for my handbag. You are aware that you are exaggerating a little issue. Give me a call after you've regained consciousness. That day, I left her house with the impression that I was in a strange dream. How did this family-destroying turmoil start from a simple tattoo that was a lovely work of art commemorating Mike? I tried to think about what had transpired at home. Even for Sarah, who had always been the most conventional of us, this response seemed excessive. I thought she would eventually settle down, though. Surely she must have? So, as usual, I continued to give her the monthly utility money. After all, the fact that she was being absurd about my tattoo shouldn't have a negative impact on her financial circumstances. But as the days stretched into weeks, I began to find that Sarah's response wasn't the only thing that bothered me. Neither Tommy nor Jake had contacted me. I generally didn't get any calls, texts, or goofy memes from them. They simply vanished, the guys who used to FaceTime me at least twice a week. I attempted to send them light-hearted texts. Hey, how's that scientific project proceeding? Work? Have you yet to complete that challenging level in your game? However, there was just quiet. The fact that Sarah had most likely prohibited them from getting in touch with me was obvious to anybody. I was furious at the idea of her using the children as players in this absurd argument. 2 months passed slowly. To distract myself from the circumstance, I immersed myself into my job and took on extra assignments. But I was unable to ignore the family conflict any longer as Thanksgiving drew near. Mom always calls weeks in advance to organize and arrange the meals, but this year there was no call. In all my adult life, Mom had never neglected to ask me to Thanksgiving, so I persuaded myself that she probably simply forgot. Everyone had been busy, so I got thoughtful gifts for Sarah and the boys as well as for everyone else, as I usually did. I bought Jake the pricey painting tools he required for his portfolio and Tommy the new game system he had been pleading for. I even bought Sarah the expensive coffee machine she had her eye on but couldn't afford for herself. I made an effort to be upbeat as I packed the presents into my car. They wouldn't let Thanksgiving be marred by a tattoo, surely. This was the most important holiday for our family and the one day of the year when we all got together, no matter what. I had managed to attend Thanksgiving dinner even 3 years prior, when I was hardly able to function due to Mike's death. I arrived at the home of my parents, the trunk brimming with thoughtfully wrapped presents. I smiled when I saw Mom's Thanksgiving decorations, the pumpkins on the porch, the fall wreaths, and the porcelain turkey she had had since I was a child. But as soon as I opened the front door, that smile vanished. As soon as I entered the scene, I felt uneasy. Even though Sarah, Mom, Dad, and the boys were there was an odd tension in the air rather than the typical Thanksgiving mayhem. They gazed at me as though I were a ghost that had suddenly appeared in their living room. I never thought I'd be starting over at 30. 3 years ago, my life was perfect, or at least that's how it felt with Mike by my side. He was everything I could have wanted, a brilliant doctor by day, a talented guitarist by night, and the kindest soul you could ever meet. We'd been together for 5 years, and I honestly thought we'd grow old together. Mike loved his motorcycle. I used to tease him about being a weekend warrior, trading his doctor's coat for leather jackets every chance he got. But that's what made him who he was, this perfect balance of responsibility and freedom. That morning was like any other. He kissed me goodbye, grabbed his helmet, and headed out for a quick ride before his hospital shift. He never made it to work. A car ran a red light, and just like that, my whole world collapsed. The first few months after the accident are still a blur. I threw myself into my programming work, taking on extra projects just to keep my mind occupied. My sister Sarah, despite her usual judgmental attitude, actually helped me through those initial weeks. She'd bring her boys, Tommy and Jake, over to my place, and their presence somehow made things a little more bearable. For 3 years, I lived in this strange limbo, not really dating, not really living, just existing. My programming job kept me busy, and I made good money, enough to help Sarah with her bills since she's been raising the boys alone after her divorce. Last week, his old bandmates came over. We do this sometimes, get together, share memories, laugh about the good times. Dave, their lead singer, brought out Mike's old guitar. Remember how he'd always say music was medicine for the soul? Dave asked, strumming a few chords. That's when it hit me. I needed to do something permanent, something meaningful to honor Mike's memory. Not just for him, but for me too. A way to carry him with me always while also marking the beginning of my journey forward. I've never been the type for tattoos. Truth be told, I used to be pretty conservative about body modifications. But somehow, the concept of getting Mike memorialized on my skin, a person with a guitar on his shoulder, felt appropriate. It seemed like the ultimate homage to the man who taught me that life was intended to be lived fearlessly. The tattoo parlor was nothing like I imagined. I'd always imagined some dark, sketchy place with neon signs and questionable hygiene, but this was more like a high-end art studio. The artist, Anna, made me feel fully at ease as she looked at the reference images I'd provided of Mike with his instrument. Hours later, I couldn't stop glancing at my arm. The detail was incredible. Mike's features, his usual stance with the guitar draped over his shoulder, even that small smirk he always had while he played. It hurt like hell, but it was worth every second. 2 weeks passed, and the tattoo healed well. I thought it was time to visit Sarah and the boys. It was a typical Saturday afternoon when I pulled up to Sarah's house. I wore a light jacket with long sleeves. The moment I knocked, I heard Tommy and Jake thundering down the stairs.
Auntie Tessa.
Tommy practically tackled me with a hug. At 12, he still hadn't lost his love for family visits. Despite his best efforts to keep his calm as a 15-year-old, Jake couldn't help but smile. His words, "Hey, Auntie Tasha." Sarah arrived behind them, seeming genuinely delighted to see me. Just in time. She responded, "I just made lunch." I took off my jacket without giving it much thought because the house was warm. The room fell silent, or at least it seemed to, until Tommy's ecstatic yell shattered the stillness, and I was wearing my favorite short-sleeved t-shirt beneath. "Not at all. Is Uncle Mike there?" He hurried to check my arm. "That's really cool. Look, Jake, it's got his guitar and everything." Jake also took a step closer, forgetting his adolescent restraint. "That's actually pretty amazing, Auntie Tasha. It resembles him exactly." Sarah's voice then sliced like ice through the boys' excitement. "What were you thinking, Tasha? That's just plain ugly." Despite my face flushing, I spoke steadily. "I didn't plan to consult anyone, Sarah. I'll make the decision of what to do with my body." She might have frozen me with the look she gave me, but she remained silent. Sarah sat there looking disapproving as the boys continued to ask questions about the tattoo and share their best memories of Mike as we sat down to lunch. She was looking at my arm as if it had personally insulted her each time I got her attention. Telling the lads about Mike's first botched attempt to teach me how to play the guitar and how he ultimately gave up and told me to stick to coding, I attempted to keep the conversation light. Sarah simply shoved her food about her plate as they giggled. Around 8 o'clock, my phone rang. As soon as Mom's name appeared on the screen, I realized what was about to happen. As soon as I removed my jacket, Sarah must have texted her. "Tasha," Mom said in that unique tone of dismay and condemnation that she had honed over the years. "Your sister just informed me about what you've done to yourself. I have to say, I don't approve at all." "What were you thinking?" I took a big breath. "Mom, I'm 30 years old. I don't need your approval for decisions concerning my own body." She made that tiny snorting sound she often makes when she's extremely irritated. Then, without further word, she hung up. The weeks following the tattoo reveal passed quickly, filled with deadlines and code. I had to spend countless hours at home in front of my computer because I was overseeing a significant project for a new client. Having an excuse to avoid seeing Sarah and dealing with additional drama regarding my tattoo was almost a relief. However, the project eventually stabilized, and I was unable to continue avoiding my family responsibilities. On Saturday afternoon, I went to Sarah's house as usual. I could tell something wasn't right as soon as she opened the door. She had that tense expression on her face when she's about to argue. Jake and Tommy were playing video games in the living room. They leaped to welcome me as soon as I entered, but Sarah interrupted their excitement. She ordered, "Boys, go upstairs," in a tone that made no space for disagreement. "I need to have a serious conversation with your aunt." They went upstairs, exchanging anxious glances, the type children get when they know something is going to happen. Their door closing reverberated throughout the suddenly quiet home.
"What's going on?"
Sincerely perplexed, I inquired. "Tasha," Mom said, her voice piercing. "What are you doing here?" I felt more and more foolish as I stood there with my arms full of gift bags. "What are you saying?" "Thanksgiving is coming up. I brought gifts for everyone." Mom whispered, "We didn't invite you," as if speaking to a child. "We thought you'd understand that meant you weren't supposed to come." The presents felt heavy all of a sudden.
"You get it?" "No what?"
"How come I wouldn't receive an invitation to Thanksgiving?" Sarah crossed her arms and took a step forward. I became aware that the males were not focusing on me at that point. Their shoulders were bent as they gazed at the ground. "Because Sarah said we don't need you showing off that tattoo and filling my children's heads with more inappropriate ideas about acceptable behavior." I put the presents down more forcefully than I should have.
"Are you serious?
"Still working on this?"
Months have passed. It's only a tattoo. Only a tattoo."
Sarah raised the pitch of her voice. "It's a symbol of rebellion and disrespect." "Oh my God," I said as I raked my hands through my hair.
"Can you all hear each other?"
Uncle Jim is completely covered with tattoos. Last month, Cousin Rachel was hit by a huge phoenix. Regarding those, no one spoke. Mom immediately hopped in, but Dad shuffled uneasily in his seat. "Tasha, that's not the same. You ought to have asked us first. You are aware of our feelings on these matters."
"I thought I was going crazy."
"You were consulted?" "I'm 30 years old. For what I do with my own body, why would I need to consult anyone?" "According to Sarah, because we're your family, because we are moral beings. Since deeds have repercussions. The only consequences here are the ones you're creating." Tears of frustration were welling up inside me. "I have a special meaning for this tattoo.
It's for Mike.
It's how I respect his memory and keep him with me." Sarah then spoke the words that would alter the course of events. She scoffed, "Oh, don't start with that again. In any case, I never liked him. Always strutting about on that deadly trap of a motorbike, acting like some wannabe rock star, and flaunting that dumb instrument." She chuckled harshly.
"You know what?
"I'm happy that automobile struck him. Perhaps at last you'll mature and begin behaving like a regular person." The room whirled around me. I found my voice even though I was having trouble breathing. "Apologize," I insisted, my voice a whisper at first, then becoming louder. "Apologize right now for what you just said about Mike." Defiantly, Sarah raised her chin. "I won't apologize for telling the truth."
"Dad.
"Mom. I want her to leave this place. Thanksgiving is being ruined by her." I glanced at my parents, expecting them to speak up, to stand up for me, to chastise Sarah for her hurtful remarks about Mike. Instead, Mom got to her feet, shakily straightening her skirt. "Tasha, I think you should go," she whispered softly. I gazed at them all, my mother's lips drawn into a thin line, my father's avoidance of eye contact, Sarah's victorious grin, and my nephew's bewildered looks. I took up all of the gift bags I had brought and left without saying anything. It was a hazy trip to the nearby homeless shelter. I hardly recall giving the gifts to the astonished volunteer at the entrance. "These are all new," I said in a robotic voice. "The gaming console, the art supplies, the coffee maker. Everything's unopened." I spent hours sitting in my dark living room at home, reflecting on everything. The Hawaii trip I had taken last year, the Christmas customs we had established, and the monthly energy payments I had been paying for Sarah since her divorce. Jake's never-ending pictures of the sunset, Tommy's joy at seeing the ocean for the first time, and Sarah's rare moment of relaxation. In order to surprise them on Christmas morning, I had previously made reservations for this year's vacation to Europe. It was more than simply the travels, though. The monthly utility bills that somehow managed to get paid even when Sarah was between jobs, the summer camp fees, the extra tutoring I paid for when Jake struggled with math, the regular shopping sprees for the boys' school clothes, and the college funds, 2 years of meticulous saving, ensuring my nephews would have options when they graduated high school. I considered what Mike might say if he could see all of this. He would most likely laugh about karma before taking it seriously and reminding me that love shouldn't be a one-sided relationship. I felt oddly at ease as I opened my laptop. Sarah's email essentially wrote itself. "I've had time to reflect about what transpired today, Sarah, and I want to make some clear decisions. Your monthly utility payments will no longer be sent by me. I'm sure you wouldn't want to depend on my money because you think I'm such a bad influence. I've cancelled our Christmas vacation to Europe, at least for you and the boys. I'm going by myself. I've been saving money for Tommy and Jake's college tuition for the last 2 years. Since you are worried that I may have influenced them, I will be shutting these accounts and using the funds for other investments. I'm hoping you'll tell the boys why this year's Christmas surprises won't be coming. Feel free to explain that their aunt is an inappropriate influence on their life because of her tattoo. Tasha." As soon as I pushed send, I shut off my phone. My head was clear, but my hands were trembling. I felt like I was actually sticking up for myself for the first time since Mike's death. I looked at my phone for a long time the next morning before turning it on. The notifications began coming in right away, 22 voicemails, 63 texts, and 37 missed calls. Sarah's message was the first one I opened. "You have no right to treat my kids like this. Because you're upset with me, you have no right to punish them. Give me a call back right now." Then Mom texted, "This is utterly self-centered conduct, Tasha. This is not how we brought you up. This family is being destroyed by a tattoo." Though shorter, Dad's message was just as full of remorse. "That money is necessary for your sister. Consider the lads." I read message after message requesting answers, justifications, and apologies, but not a single one of them addressed Sarah's hurtful remarks about Mike or expressed regret for how they treated me during Thanksgiving. I was shocked out of my work around 2 o'clock in the afternoon by a loud banging sound. I had been attempting to bury myself in the code, but my focus was broken by Sarah's voice coming through the door. "Tasha, open this door right now." Sarah's voice reverberated throughout the flat. "We need to have a serious conversation." I heard Mom say something. "Sweetheart, please let us talk about this like adults." I yelled back, sounding more composed than I actually felt, "I don't want to talk to any of you, please go. You are acting malevolently." Tears broke in Sarah's voice. "You're taking revenge. Consider Jake and Tommy." Instead, I left them to their dramatics in the corridor and retired to my home office, donning my noise-canceling headphones. Their voices finally trailed off. It was like psychological warfare for the next 2 weeks. There were fresh attempts to weaken my determination every day. My phone turned into a battleground for deception and guilt trips. "Honey, family is everything," Aunt Linda phoned. "You can't discard it because it's so pointless." "Come on, Tash, just apologize and put this right," Cousin Mark texted. "Family must remain united. Uncle Peter then made an attempt. Your mom is inconsolable. Is ruining your family for this truly worth it? I pushed the end call button or erased the message whenever family was brought up. The fact that I wasn't the one who had damaged anything didn't seem to register with any of them. Family members were not barred because of body art by me. It wasn't me who had made fun of a deceased man's memories. The stress increased as Christmas drew near. Every day brought fresh, increasingly frantic attempts at communication, but Sarah went above and beyond. One morning, Tasha rushed toward me through the light December snow and said, "Please, we need to talk," as she surprised me outside my apartment building. What I said about Mike has been on my mind. Those were inappropriate things for me to say. I apologize. I quit fiddling with my shoulder-mounted work bag. Given the timing, the words I had been waiting weeks to hear felt empty. Are you truly sorry, Sarah, or are you just upset that I'm no longer covering your expenses? Apologies for canceling the vacation to Europe. I'm sorry the boys' college money is gone. She blushed. That is unfair. I shouldn't be the reason the lads are punished. There was no comedy in my laughter. What's unfair, you know? Because of a tattoo, you forbade me from visiting them. You claimed to be happy that Uncle Mike passed away, but now that the money is gone, you feel the need to put things right. Her voice cracked as she continued, the college funds. That was for their future. You're correct. Yes, it was. But you say I'm a negative influence. That would also make my money bad, wouldn't it? We wouldn't want your kids' futures to be ruined by my shady tattoo money, would we? Sarah's face became purple instead of red. You're not entitled. No. I interrupted her. Sarah, they are your words and your reasoning. My money must be equally corrupting if I'm such a bad influence that I can't be around the lads. Here, I'm just following your example. This is different, she said passionately. This is their education. No, this is the result of the decisions you made. You can't have both of them. Either I'm their aunt who loves them and wants to support them, or I'm a negative influence and everything connected to me is horrible. Select one. I paused at the main desk before turning and entering my building. Jerry, I informed the concierge who had been keeping an eye on our building for the last 10 years, my parents and sister are no longer welcome here. Don't let them get to my floor, please. When Christmas arrived, I was alone myself for the first time in my life. Not quite alone though. Paris, Rome, and Barcelona were where I spent it. I didn't share any photos on social media, but I heard Sarah and my parents complaining to anybody who would listen about their egotistical daughter leaving her family for a tattoo. However, I came to the realization that this was no longer about the tattoo as I stood on a bridge in Venice and watched the sunset tint the canals in pink and gold. It might not have been. Control and poisonous family relationships were at the heart of this, even before I had that picture of Mike on my arm. I did something that I should have done 3 years ago the day I got back from Europe. I scheduled a session with a therapist. In contrast to the clinical notion I had in mind, Dr. Martinez's office was welcoming and cozy. Tell me why you're here, she asked in a kind yet formal tone. I inadvertently touched my tattoo. I need to work through some things, family stuff mainly, and I need to figure out how to let go of someone I lost while still keeping his memory alive. She waited for me to finish by nodding. I cherished Mike. I suppose you still adore him. However, I am aware that he would not want me to dwell on the past. He always stated that life should be lived with courage, and for the first time since his passing, I feel like I'm living that way. Defending my rights and making my own decisions rather than merely following the will of others. I became aware of something significant when I looked down at the tattoo on my arm, the picture of Mike playing his guitar that had somehow started this whole change, and understood that it was more than simply a monument to Mike. It had come to represent my own power, my capacity to defend myself, and my readiness to live my life as I saw fit. With his guitar draped over his shoulder, the Mike in the tattoo appeared to be grinning back at me, permanently frozen in that happy moment while doing what he loved. Though he would always have a special place in my heart, perhaps it was time to see what other delights life had in store for me.